So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're taking a interesting look at probably one of the most devastating losses by an NHL powerhouse in league history. Now, the 1985-86 Edmonton Oilers were that good. They were coming off two consecutive Stanley Cups after knocking the New York Islanders off the pedestal 2 years before and holding on to their title entering the 1985-86 season. Now, the Oilers at the time, which were led by, superstars, Gretzky, Curry, Coffey, Anderson, Messier, Moog, Fuhr, tremendous lineup. 85-86 season cemented their number one status in the NHL. The end of the season with only 17 losses in 80 games, with an outstanding home record of 32-6-2 or 56-17-7 overall record. Their goals for just tremendous, over 5 goals a game. Yet again, 426 goals, while Moog and Fuhr held the team to less than 4 in a wide open Western Conference. Now, general manager and coach Glenn Sather had made different moves in the regular season to make the team stronger, if that can be even imagined. In the regular season, Gretzky broke the points record with 163 assists, 52 goals, of course, for 215 points. Never been seen before such a great season for overall play. Coffey missed only one game, had a great durable season, 138 points. Curry was at 131, including 68 goals. Anderson, big season again, more than 100 points, 54 goals. Messier, 84 points, 35 goals. Statistically, the team was unbeatable in the regular season. Now, they had some off-ice issues with, of course, different legal needs for some of their players. Now, I don't want to go too deep into it because I don't really think it played much of a factor, but it's well documented that Dave Hunter, he had several impaired driving problems. Messier, accidentally hit tree park cars with his Porsche, and Craig McTavish had just come off a 1-year sentence for a vehicular homicide. Now, these distractions were just that. I think that the Oiler family wanted to keep the players close and help them out, especially McTavish, and he became an integral part of the team that year and into the years to come. But, of course, the big story of the 85-86 season was the Battle of Alberta. And if anybody doesn't know what the Battle of Alberta is, you've been living under a needle rock. As strong as the Battle of Quebec was at the time between the Nordiques and the Canadians, Edmonton against Calgary, the Calgary Flames, led by superstar Lanny McDonald, was at the time a one-sided battle. For the Flames, led by head coach Bob Johnson, their focus during the season, especially last in the season, was to get away from the struggles against their provincial rivals. Calgary had some heavy frustration against Edmonton in the regular season, including a mid-season game where a large brawl led to the ejection of 5 players from the game, and that led to an infamous moment involving former Montreal Canadian Doug Risebrough, one of Calgary's key players, who ended up in the penalty box with Marty McSorley's jersey from the Oilers. And Risebrough, in a frustrated act, literally shredded the jersey with his skates before tossing him back on the ice. I don't think it has ever been seen before or since. Now, Glenn Sather kind of rubbed salt in the wound. He was enraged. He called Risebrough childish and threatened to send him a $1,000 bill to replace the sweater. Now, at the time, Bob Johnson was working behind the scenes to get his team more prepared for Edmonton than any other team in the league, just in case he would meet in the first or second round. Now, after the regular season, Calgary was 30 points behind Edmonton in the standings, and that was significant back then because 30 points meant 15 total games in the standings. Now, according to some hockey historians, Bob Johnson started what was then called a 7-point plan for beating the Oilers. Now, what he wanted to do, he wanted to take away Gretzky, Coffey, and Curry's offensive prowess by limiting access, supposedly to a side of the ice where the Oilers players would like to play. They would leave their physical players on the ice more often, including Neil the Butcher Sheehy, which was a very aggressive player, and the hard-working, underrated Colin Patterson. Now, their roles were there to frustrate the older players. Now, Johnson, just like when the Montreal Canadiens tried with the Flyers at the start of the 75-76 season, built on it slowly because the Canadiens wanted to beat the Flyers at their own game, and that's what Johnson did. And it really came into place in 2 late-season games where Calgary tied them and then defeated the Oilers in the final regular season game. And, you know, of course, typical Calgary Edmonton game was another brawl, and there was talk about using goons on both sides. Now, the first round went as planned. In the second round, Calgary and Edmonton met in the playoffs. And as the series went on, something really strange happened. Johnson's plan to stop Edmonton was starting to work. Calgary won 2 games in the Northlands Coliseum in the first 6, thus forcing a Game 7, especially the opening game that went to Calgary. And we knew something was up. Edmonton was off their game, and especially entering Game 7, there was a lot of talk amongst the media, like myself, and fans of the Oilers, that Edmonton wasn't maybe ready for a Game 7. And Game 7 was just that. Calgary held them on the defensive stand for most of the game early on, and the game was tied until a very interesting thing happened. Edmonton had a good young player, young defenseman named Steve Smith, who tried to clear the puck in his own zone, and he accidentally hit it off the back pad of Grand Fuhr and created an own goal. Now, this goal came with a few minutes left in the contest, and a lot of us thought, hey, you know, there was a big mistake. Smith could happen to anybody. You know, Edmonton's going to come back. And he didn't come back, and eventually Calgary held on for the victory. And what was devastating for fans of the Oilers and happiness for the fans of Calgary, when a team like Edmonton in his prime could lose like that, it threw the whole NHL playoff prediction out the window. On the Eastern Conference side, or the East, the Montreal Canadiens were starting to gain momentum, and the momentum was starting to build and continue to build and continue to build. Montreal knocked off Boston and Hartford in the first 2 rounds. In the third round, he faced a very strong opponent in the Rangers, but Montreal's youth movement took over. And by the time he faced Calgary in the final, I think Calgary was so burnt out from being Edmonton and outlasting St. Louis that Doug Gilmour led St. Louis Blues. Gilmour wasn't with Calgary at the time. He had nothing left, and the same system that worked against Edmonton couldn't work against Montreal. Montreal could play better defensive game than Calgary could. See, Calgary at the time didn't have many superstars to talk of. They had, obviously McGinnis and Lanny McDonald and a few other players. Mike Vernon was strong, but beating Edmonton, I think, burnt them out. Now, you could say a lot of things about the 85-86 season. It was quite interesting, but to know that the Oilers could be defeated by a hard-working team led by, one of the best coaches of all time, Bob Johnson, who later on went on success with Pittsburgh under Mary Lemieux. Let me tell you, it was quite a year. But Steve Smith is not to be blamed for the loss. People didn't blame him at the time, and I don't blame him now. It could happen to anybody. Hockey's an interesting game. But we always think maybe that Grand Fuhr was a little bit tired because he had played the majority of games for Edmonton in the playoffs up to that time. Andy Moog was a backup, I think, for all 9 of the 10 games. So just a combination of strange factors. And it just goes to show that no matter how good you are, the best team could lose, and the team that outlasts the better teams, like the Montreal Canadiens, can win. 86 was the last glory year for the old NHL of the 1970s into the 80s. After then was offense-led NHL. Edmonton won 2 more cups under Gretzky and another one under Messier later on. But 5 straight cups is still the golden ring. Montreal Canadiens did it. Edmonton Oilers almost did. The Oilers came close to doing it, losing the number 5 to Edmonton. It was so hard in the mid-'80s to be consistent, on defense and offense. But again, just factors can happen in sports, and we knew Edmonton wasn't done just because he lost to Calgary. We knew Calgary wasn't done because he lost to Montreal, and it proved 3 years later, led by Gilmour, and the last year McDonald, he knocked off Montreal. So if there's any Edmonton or Calgary fans listening to this, You should be glad that both teams kept the Battle of Alberta going for so long. I don't think the Battle of Alberta will ever reach the levels like it did before. I don't think Connor McDavid has that aggressive, dirty instinct that some of the Edmonton players had. Gretzky, some people claim he enjoyed the battles more than he enjoyed the game. He would kind of rub it in on Calgary sometimes and nuts the brawls and all that. But, hockey's a strange game. You got to keep your stick on the ice, literally. So if anyone wants to look back at some of the 85-86 playoffs, they're available on YouTube. Some of the specialty channels have it. So on this cold pre-storm night at the Canterbury home office in Canterbury, New Brunswick, all I can say is that if you shoot, especially in the NHL, it might go in. And in the case of Steve Smith, he shot it, but it didn't end up in the right net. Anyway, Steve Smith just goes to show bad things can happen to good people. So, Steve, still keep your head up because you were a great pro. I heard you're a great person, so things do happen. And have a good one. Bye.